Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Caitlin Garbett, and I am the Programs and Services Coordinator for Parkinson Society Southwestern Ontario. Welcome to today's webinar by Larry Gifford, talking about living well with Parkinson's. Before I go and introduce Larry, I just want to mention that we do have AbbVie sponsoring this lovely webinar. And AbbVie is a research-driven, patient-focused biopharmaceutical company dedicated to helping people live with different chronic diseases that are usually difficult to treat. So thank you to AbbVie. Now I'd like to go into talking a little bit about Larry. Larry Gifford is a Senior Program Director and Manager of Talk and Talent for Chorus Vancouver and has spent nearly 30 years as an award-winning radio reporter and manager. Larry was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's in August of 2017. In September of 2018, he launched the podcast Where Life Gives You Parkinson's, which details his journey with the disease as a guy in his 40s with a family and a career. The show was named among the best of 2018 by Apple Podcast. Larry serves as a member of the Michael J. Fox Foundation Patient Council and is a board member of the Pacific Parkinson's Research Institute, as well as he has a team of the World Parkinson's Congress in Japan this year to showcase his podcast at the conference. Welcome, Larry. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to learning all about how to live well with Parkinson's.
Well, thanks, Caitlin. I'm happy to be here, and hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for attending this great webinar. I hope it's a great webinar. So first I want to introduce you to my family. That's me on the left. Hello. And that's my lovely wife in the middle, and that's my son Henry off to the right. And I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked a lot of times is how Parkinson's affects the entire family. And so we're really in this journey together. As Caitlin mentioned, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in August of 2017. At that time, my son was 7. My wife was we'd been married for 18 years. And so we kind of had things figured out, and so it was a real left turn for all of us. And looking back, I know now that I've been dealing with the symptoms for about 8 years. It started with the way I walked. My wife and I would be, even before Henry was around, would be walking, taking a hike or whatever, and she'd want it to be a quiet, serene, walk in the woods, and I'd be going clomp, 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 and my foot would drag. And she's like, not for nothing, but can you pick up your feet a little bit? And I'm like, yeah, that's weird. Maybe I'm out of shape, or maybe I'm getting old. And we just sort of dealt with it. And it got worse over time, but we didn't think anything of it. I'd never been that old before, so I thought maybe that's what aging was about. After a while, I realized I like to throw the frisbee with my son, and I couldn't time the release of the frisbee anymore. And so I had to learn how to throw the frisbee with my left hand. And it just sort of happened organically. It wasn't conscious. I just stopped throwing it with my right hand. My right arm stopped swinging. I lost my sense of smell. I was tired a lot. I was beginning to think I was getting weaker on the entire right side of my body. At that time, I was traveling a lot back and forth between California and Canada, and it was getting harder and harder to do that. It was really uncomfortable to travel. I used to be a prolific note taker and loved to, leave a meeting with all sorts of quotes and objectives and, page full of information. And after a while, I'd go back and look at my notes, and I couldn't read them anymore because my handwriting had gotten so small and illegible. And this was before my diagnosis even. So I stopped using my front right pocket because I couldn't bring my hand close enough I couldn't do the fine motor skills. I couldn't figure out how to get my hand in my right pocket. So I just stopped using it, which seems, at some point along the line, you'd go to the doctor, but, I was stubborn and I didn't like doctors. I began to have some numbness and pains in my foot. I had balance issues. Kept bumping into doorways and desks and people. And it wasn't until I was handing my son a glass of water and my hand was tremoring so much. He looked at me, and the water was spilling out. He goes, "Dad, what's wrong with your hand?" And I said, "I don't know, son. I don't know." And that's when I decided to go to my GP. And my doctor, she's great, sort of new to me and the family. And when I explained all the symptoms that I was having, and she goes, I think I need to send you to a neurologist for MS. And she thought at the time that I had MS because I was complaining of weakness. And after a couple of months, I saw the neurologist, and he went through a lot of the same tests we test for Parkinson's, and he said, good news is this is not MS. He goes, you're not weaker on your right side, you're slower. And it was the finger tap test that really was shocking to me. Like I could move my left fingers, my forefinger and my thumb together really quick. On the right side, I couldn't bring them together, and I could tap my left foot, but I couldn't tap my right foot. And so it was apparent even to me in the moment that something was seriously wrong. I ended up going to a neurologist about 3 or 4 months later who specialized in Parkinson's. In the meantime, my MS neurologist had started me immediately on levodopa and ordered an MRI, and then I met Dr. Squires, who you see in these pictures, and that's my neurologist. And he said, he took me through the whole battery of tests, and he goes, well, you've got Parkinsonisms, that's for sure, and it's probably Parkinson's. And I like, what do you mean Parkinson? What do you mean probably? And he says, well, I mean, the only surefire way we can tell if you have it is to do an autopsy. I said, well, we can hold off on that. I'll take your professional judgment on this. And so that was that. And I left the doctor's office, and I was thinking, like, I don't know anybody who has Parkinson's. I knew of Michael J. Fox, and I knew of Muhammad Ali, and I was kind of like, what have I gotten myself into? What is this? Is it going to kill me? Am I going to need to quit my job? Are they going to fire me? What happens next? It was all overwhelming. How'd this happen? What do I do? And then for a while, a few months, 6 months, 8 months, I indulged in drinking quite a bit, seemingly every night. I don't know if I was trying to pickle my Parkinson's or what, but it didn't work. And I was depressed, and I was quite secretive about the diagnosis, and I wasn't sure how people would react. And frankly, I didn't really know what my reaction was. I've been a pretty healthy guy all my life. I didn't see a lot of doctors. I didn't take a lot of medicine. And here I am now 4 times a day taking pills. It was new for me. It was scary. And I think that a lot of people, when they first diagnosed, feel that overwhelming sense of anxiety and like, what has happened? And then you're beating yourself up because, like, for 8 years I've been having symptoms of some sort, and I didn't think anything of it. So after I got through the downward spiral a bit, I was inspired to own my Parkinson's. And this is Dr. Ray Dorsey. He was a guest on the Michael J. Fox Foundation podcast, and he was talking about how Parkinson's is becoming a pandemic. That 10 years ago, the number of people who were diagnosed with Parkinson's has doubled to today. So in 10 years, we've doubled the amount of people who have Parkinson's around the world, and in 10 years, it's going to double again. And he described that as a pandemic. We don't know why it's rapidly increasing, but what we do know, and what he said, is if people with Parkinson's don't start sharing their stories, don't start making some noise and demanding attention, we'll never get enough recognition and attention. We'll never raise enough awareness to raise enough money to do enough research to find the cure. So I'm listening to this podcast going, well, I'm a storyteller. That's what I've done all my life. And I've got access to radio and TV stations and websites and blogs. And I thought, and I've got connections in radio around the world. I thought, well, if I'm not willing to tell my story, how can I expect anybody else to? So I decided at that point that I was going to own my story. And I'd been working with the Parkinson Society of British Columbia for a while, and was in support group. And then I talked to my boss, and I said I'd like to share my story on TV and radio on World Parkinson's Awareness Day. So last April 11th, I went on TV, and to the shock of a lot of my colleagues and friends, I began to share my story. And I put together a documentary for radio. I put together an article for the website, and it was very well received. And so last September, we launched the podcast, When Life Gives You Parkinson's. And the podcast has been really, really cathartic for me. It's created a community of people with Parkinson's and caregivers and neurologists and researchers that I can now call upon, that I consider part of my support. And I wanted it to be a personal journey. I had been looking for a personal podcast, as somebody who has been working in radio and audio for a long time. I didn't find what I wanted. The Michael J. Fox Foundation podcast is brilliant, but it's very clinical. It's very, very much oriented towards research. And I was looking for a patient perspective. And so I thought, well, if it's not there, I'll create it. And so it starts with my journey and the people I meet along the way. And it gives me an opportunity to not just tell my story, but my wife's story, my son's story, and all the people that I meet along the way. In each episode, we focus on a different aspect of Parkinson's, from coming to terms with the disease and not having to apologize for it, to figuring out sleep issues and my adventures into CBD oil. And I've never been one for exercise, and apparently that's the only thing they can prescribe to keep the symptoms at bay. So I started searching for what can I do that I would enjoy, and so I tried CrossFit and boxing and physiotherapy, and I documented all this for the podcast. So it's been quite an adventure. And it's very rewarding, and the community has been great, and it continues. And we're currently, the podcast season 1 wrapped up, and we're currently previewing the World Parkinson Congress, which is in Kyoto, Japan this year, which happens every 3 years somewhere in the world, where the scientists, the neurologists, the researchers, caregivers, healthcare workers, people with Parkinson's all get together in the same place, and for 4 days, we discuss Parkinson's and share ideas. And the marvelous thing about this conference is, like, a lot of these researchers have never met anybody with Parkinson's, so they get to see the effects of the disease and the effects of the drugs and the treatments that they're creating, which is really remarkable. And a lot of people with Parkinson's have never met somebody who does the research, and so they get to learn about that. And so what I'm doing right now is previewing some of the people who will be there, who will be speaking, and gain some of their insights. And if you can't travel to Kyoto, it's a great opportunity to hear what some of the messages are going to be there. At the end of the regular season, first season of the podcast, and next fall in the second season, at the end of each episode, my wife and I go to our bedroom and we have a conversation, an intimate chat, which I think is really important to include her in this process, because it's, as I said earlier, this just isn't my diagnosis. We're all dealing with it, and the caregiver's perspective is really important, and so we try to keep that evident in every episode, and we do have one episode that is solely devoted just to caregivers. So as I started to embrace my Parkinson's, I realized, in talking to people, that I needed to have a team. I couldn't do this by myself. I don't have to do this by myself. I'm not prepared for it. I don't have the knowledge and the resources for it. And B, we're not alone. There's a lot of people out there to help. So I started making a list of people that were part of my team, and then trying to figure out who else I wanted to add. So I knew I had my family and my friends. After, I didn't know that until after I came out and started sharing my stories. I was afraid I was going to lose them, and the exact opposite happened. Those relationships became closer and tighter, and a stronger bond. My support group, who I meet with once a month, and I go to a couple of different support groups over the course of time, but there's one that I've consistently gone to, and it's a great group of friends. And sometimes even after the meeting, we'll go next door and grab a cup of coffee, or reach out to each other via email. It's a good group. Obviously, my neurologist is an important member of my team. I see him every 6 months, and every 6 months he seems to increase my medication. My general practitioner is involved in what I do, and she's in touch with my neurologist. I have a physiotherapist. There's the people in my exercise class. I've got a counselor who's helped me through some mild depression and some anxiety. I have a massage therapist. I don't know about you, but I get really tight in my arms and my legs. And so to have somebody to just sort of work those kinks out every month is really important to me. My pharmacist. I see my pharmacist more often than I see my neurologist or my GP or my physio. So my pharmacist is part of my team, and my podcast community has really become a really important part of what I do. As my responsibility, the way I see it, is that I need to keep all these people informed about how I'm doing, because they each have a different perspective on my symptoms. So I keep a journal, and I document anything abnormal. I document symptoms, whether they're new or they're old, if they left and they come back, how often do they happen, what's the intensity of it. So when I meet any of them, I can pull out, I just do it on the Notes app on my phone, but it allows me to really take control of my healthcare and make sure that everybody's in the loop. I think that's really been valuable to me and to them, because I don't know about you, but my memory is not always the best, so I like to keep an ongoing journal of what's going on. A really important part of living my best life, it starts with the pills. I counted the other day, between the vitamins and the probiotics and the levodopa and everything else I'm taking about 130 pills a week. I'm on levodopa and selaginine and vitamin D and probiotics and statins and aspirin and magnesium glycinate and melatonin for sleep. And sometimes, Aleve or Advil or Tylenol if the pain gets too high. And my neurologist says, the only reason that I prescribe levodopa is because A, I want you to live as normal a life as you can. And B, I want you to have the strength, the energy, and the coordination so you can exercise. You're taking the pills so you can exercise, because exercise is the most important thing you can do. And to that end, I've discovered that, listen, I'm not a workout fiend. I'm not going to run marathons, at least not right now. I've had to accept that exercise is going to be a part of my life, which has been very hard for me. But what I've found is that as long as I have one class a week that I go to where I can really where it's intensive, whether it's boxing or circuit training, I do one-on-one with my physiotherapist. I don't drive anymore, so I take transit, and so I'll walk an extra bus stop or two to just get that extra exercise in. I'll take a walk at lunch. I find ways to build it into my life, and I don't beat myself up if I don't do exactly what the doctors say I need to do. If they say you need to work out 45 minutes 3 times a week really hard, and I only get one of those in, all right, well, I'm glad I got one in. We have to be kind to ourselves. We can't do everything all the time. Every week's different. So, I like taking a class because it sort of keeps me accountable to my classmates. But you should, if you have an exercise bike or a treadmill at home, that's just as good. Sharing my story has been really important. Important part of living my best life. It takes a weight off because I'm not hiding things from anybody anymore. really allows me to control the narrative. If people would notice that maybe I wasn't as focused, or I was more tired, or I was missing things, or I was walking funny, they start to fill in the blanks on their own, and they start the rumor mill starts, especially at the office. And so this really allowed me to take control of what was going on and own the story. And it, by sharing my story and encouraging others to do the same, it allows me to connect with people all over the world and keep connected to people with Parkinson's and learn about how they're dealing with things and trade ideas and resources. And it also raises awareness, which is sort of my mission right now, is to continue to raise awareness for Parkinson's. Additionally, I think it's important, part of living my best life, is participating in research. If I feel like I'm helping, I don't want to be the guy waiting around tapping my feet or thumbing my fingers going, so where's my cure? We have to get our hands dirty if we want a cure. We got to raise awareness, raise money, and raise ourselves off the couch and enter some research trials, because without us, they can't test these drugs. And so it was kind of a revelation for me. I'm like, well, can't they figure this out? And it's not they, it's us. We're all in this together. The guy there is Dr. Matt Farrer, who found the first genetic connection to Parkinson's in the LRRK2. And genetics plays a small role in Parkinson's. Less than 10% of the people have Parkinson's passed on from familial relationships, but he's doing some great work. They've found like 70 DNA connections to Parkinson's, which is really amazing. I find I need to advocate for myself, and that means a lot of different things. But for the first thing, it means when I have a doctor's appointment, it's not the doctor's appointment. It's their appointment with me. They get to have a Larry appointment. And so I sort of flip the table and make sure that I get to ask the questions that I want to ask. And if I've read some research or I've read about something that I want to take part in, I ask them about that. That's a picture of me buying CBD oil. I was having a really hard time sleeping. And people were recommending all sorts of things. So I went to my neurologist and sort of fired off a couple of items, and he said, well, CBD oil, it's not going to hurt you, so if you try it and see if you like it. It didn't work for me, but I also didn't have any THC in it, and a lot of people say you have to activate the CBD with THC, but there's a lot more research that needs to be done on it, on the effectiveness of it and how it can work with Parkinson's and the symptoms of Parkinson's. But some people swear by it. So, and then I think also part of advocating for yourself is being present in those doctor's appointments and sessions. So always take someone with you or record the session to listen back to it later, because it's easy to forget that stuff. And the more information you have and the more you can remember what your physicians and neurologists say to you, the better off you'll be. Asking for help. This can be tough, right? And it feels very vulnerable, and it feels like, well, no, I can muster this. But nobody needs to be a hero. No one needs to be a martyr. You're not alone. And so, like, we went to the amusement park in Florida, Universal, and I asked for I forget what it's called. It's like a pass that allows me to skip the lines, because I didn't, standing in line was, can be difficult, as you know. And I was getting really big cramps in my feet. I have neuropathy in my feet, and so it was really uncomfortable to just stand around for a while. And they weren't going to give it to me. And I kept pressing, and my wife was advocating for me as well. They kept trying to give me a wheelchair. Like, I don't want a wheelchair. I just want this pass where I don't have to stand in line. They're like, well, what you're describing is you need a wheelchair. And I'm like, well, but I don't want a wheelchair. And we went back and forth. I started to leave, and she goes, well, do you get anxious when you're standing in line? And I'm like, yes, I do. She goes, oh, I can give you a pass for that then. So you just sort of have to be persistent, and sure, maybe I get anxious, but if that's the key word they needed to give me the pass, then you know, good for me. Um, at the airport, that picture is taken in the Minneapolis airport. We were flying to Florida, and I ordered a wheelchair from the gate where we landed to our connecting flight because it was going to be a walk across the airport. And even though I have my walking sticks, it was going to be slow going, and I was going to be exhausted by the time I got to the other side. It wasn't comfortable for me to be in a wheelchair, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I asked for the help. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength when you can figure out how you can get around easier. No one says we need to suffer. On the bus, I take the bus every day, and I have my walking sticks with me, and they've got these special seats for people that have handicaps, and I take those bus seats because it's hard for me to balance on the bus, and so I think that those little things are important, and they're for you, so take advantage of them, and make just daily adjustments to your tasks to make things easier. Look, they have special, mice now if you have trouble, with a shaky hand, controlling the mouse on your computer. They've got the devices for that, and there's all sorts of little things you can do throughout the day to make your life and your daily tasks easier. And I'd encourage you to seek those out. Take care of yourself. This is one that's really important. That's a picture of me and my son taking a nap. I enjoy a good nap. And it's not a bad thing. If you got a nap, take a nap. Take a bath, take a hot shower, get a massage. Know when you got to just say no. Like sometimes we have, brunch with friends planned on a Sunday morning at 11, and I'm like, I can't do it today. You can go on your own, or we can cancel, but I just can't do it. And I have to be comfortable enough just saying no, and reserve my energy and sometimes my sanity. And then and splurge on yourself every now and again. If you want a piece of pie, then maybe every now and again have a piece of pie. Part of being kind to yourself is also not comparing your symptoms and your pill regimen to others with PD. I know it's hard not to do this, but this isn't a contest. We each have our own individual Parkinson's and our own individual treatments, and just be comfortable knowing that you're doing the best for you that you can do. And you can be curious and ask what kind of drugs people are on, and what's working for them and what's not. Some people really like the drug amantadine to coincide with their levodopa to keep the dyskinesias at bay. For me, it gave me hallucinations. So, and it's good to have that knowledge, but we don't need to compare each other to each other. Be sure to tell your team about all changes. And if you can't keep up with your kids or your grandkids, find alternatives. Like I've got a 9-year-old son who wants to go all the time. Well, I can't do that anymore. And some days it's really hard for me to play on the floor, and he wants to play, trains or cars or building blocks. And so what we've done is he asks me every day, can we play? And he knows the answer will be, could be a yes, could be a no. And if it's a yes, is it a 5-minute play, a 10-minute play, a 15-minute play? And sometimes it's, what, I can't play on the floor, but let's play some cards or let's play a board game. And we look for ways to engage with him that's still comfortable for me. And I think that's important. And then finally, it involves the family. It is a family affair, so we're out raising money and raising awareness together. We're all doing stuff on TV and radio, and we're having fun, and we're still living life. We're still traveling around. We sweat a little bit. We dream a lot. It's been 18 months since my diagnosis, and I really I'm amazed by the gifts that Parkinson's have given me. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't like the disease, and I don't want it, and I wouldn't choose it. But it's mine, and it's not going anywhere. So I figure I might as well figure out a way to work with it and make a difference in my life. So when I wake up, usually in the middle of the night sometime, I have a choice to make. Am I choosing to approach the day as a grouch and complain to everybody about my numb toes and my achy shoulder and my rigid legs, my tremor, my bruise? Or am I going to be grateful and happy that I got another day? And I find it's a lot more fun to celebrate the good in life. Parkinson's has given me a lot of new perspectives. My issues, physical or otherwise, including trivial matters like pet peeves, used to consume hours of my energy. Now, if I can't control it, I don't spend a lot of time on it. I breathe, I move, I do what I can each day. Some days I know are going to be really productive, and other days, not at all. And that's okay. I acknowledge the things in my life that I'm grateful for. And when I do that, that quickly helps to squash that sense of loneliness that the shadow of Parkinson's casts on my life. So being in charge of my health, choosing happiness, realizing I'm not alone, asking for help, seizing opportunities, all these things have really helped me live my best life with Parkinson's. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Larry. That's quite the touching story, I have to admit. It's almost like for everybody online today, that everyone has someone that they cherish in their life, and it's really nice to be able to come together as a community to really fight this disease because nobody is alone with this disease. So it's just nice to hear how people live well differently with this disease. And you offer so many different key points and insights that I think everyone feels the hope still, because I think hope is a very strong feeling. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Very inspirational. So
Thank you.
if anybody has questions for Larry, please do so by just looking on your little panel. There's a little question area that you can ask. I know it takes time sometimes for people to ask questions, but if you do need more time to think about it, you can always email Larry. Larry, what is your email?
So you can reach me at parkinsonspod@curiouscast.ca.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got on the screen here, curiouscast.ca is the website for the podcast, and you can also download it on Apple and Spotify and Google, and then there's all the social media contacts as well on the screen.
Perfect. Actually, I have one question for you. Some of our clients are grandparents, I guess, to young ones who may not understand Parkinson's, and if they're newly diagnosed, is there any advice of how you would explain it to your grandkids?
Well, so there are a couple of books that are good. One is called Shaky Hands, A Child's Guide to Parkinson's. And the other one is by the same author, Sonia Mather. It's called My Grandpa's Shaky Hands. And those do a good job sort of, distilling the information and making it digestible. But for my wife and I, we've included Henry in a conversation about what's going on since the beginning, and the idea that he was the one that asked me the question that got me to go to the doctor has been really important. And since then, we've given him jobs because we want him to be a part of this. So his job is to notice when I tremor, whether we're out to dinner or we're at the amusement park. He goes, "Hey, Dad, you're tremoring." Now I know I'm tremoring, but for him, he feels like he's part of it now. And then we let him ask questions whenever he wants and share the way he's feeling. And we try to explain things as best we can for his, and he can only accept so much. And after a while, he'll go, "Okay, I'm done." And we're like, "All right, well, if you have more questions, just let us know."
Perfect. Well, that's good to know. Okay. One question is, exercise is very fundamental and important for Parkinson's. Which exercise routine has helped you the most with Parkinson's?
I'm through my physiotherapist. She has a class on that is uh, circuit training, and I've done the boxing and I like the boxing, but the circuit training for me, for whatever reason, seems to be the one that I'm gravitating towards right now. I have a real hard time riding a bike for whatever reason, just the coordination, and I don't like to run. So what this does is this it keeps it interesting and goes quick and get a good sweat. I've got that tonight at 6 o'clock. And so that's what's really helped me a lot. But everybody's different. Just find something to, and just move. Just whatever you can do.
Perfect. Okay, well, if anyone has other questions outside of that, please feel free to connect with Larry or myself. A couple of news again from Parkinson's Society of Western Ontario. We do have our one last Living Well conference taking place in Windsor next Tuesday at the Holiday Inn Ambassador Bridge, Windsor, of course. And it's all about what's in your PD toolkit. So basically, it comprises of what an allied healthcare team involves and how each person's role takes part in the journey of Parkinson's. So if you have not ever been to one of these conferences, I do recommend that you register through our website. We also have our Hair Affair, which is very, very exciting. Hair Affair takes place anywhere across Southwestern Ontario, London, KW, Cambridge on April 28th. Please go to our website to see if there's any hair salons near you, and all proceeds that can be donated to Parkinson's research. And lastly, our next webinar will not be till next month. Please visit our website. I believe the title is to be determined, but if you do have any questions regarding it, please contact me. And thank you again to AbbVie for supporting our webinars this year. We're thrilled to have their support, and I know they're very influential in education. They stand by that. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to Larry for taking the time out of your day to be with us. Again, thrilled to have such a highly supportive community, and I hope to continue to work on providing more webinars like this in the future. So thank you again, Larry, and we'll have to have you come to probably one of our conferences in the future.
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks, Caitlin.
No problem. All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.